Picture this. You step into a room and something shifts. People turn towards you without knowing why. Conversations open, doors unlock. The world around you begins moving with you instead of against you. This isn't coincidence, and it's not luck. What you're witnessing is the direct consequence of operating at maximum vibrational frequency, a state where your consciousness becomes so coherent that reality itself has no choice but to reorganize around your energetic signature. But here's what most people get wrong about this. Maximizing your vibration isn't about maintaining constant positivity or forcing yourself to feel good. It's about achieving energetic coherence through deep perception, understanding how reality actually works, and calibrating your entire being to those fundamental laws. What you're about to discover will shift everything you thought you knew about frequency, consciousness, and your relationship to the field itself. Now, before we go deeper, pause for just a moment and write in the comments, "I am maximizing my frequency to shape reality." This declaration isn't casual. It's an energetic signal you're sending into the quantum field, a statement of intention that begins rewiring your relationship to what's possible. Let this journey begin. The science of vibrational frequency isn't New Age fantasy. It's grounded in decades of consciousness research that most people never encounter. One of the most groundbreaking pioneers in this field was Jacobo Grinberg, a Mexican neurophysiologist who spent his entire career investigating how mind, perception, and reality interact at the deepest levels. Grinberg developed what he called synergic theory, a revolutionary framework proposing that consciousness itself is a unified informational field, a living matrix that doesn't just observe reality, but actively molds it based on the observer's internal state. What this means is staggering. The world you perceive, the experiences you encounter, the very texture of your reality is being continuously shaped by the frequency at which your consciousness operates within this field. Grinberg's research went even further. He studied shamans and meditators, measuring their brainwave patterns and discovering something extraordinary. Those who had trained their consciousness to enter expanded states showed remarkable neural coherence, a synchronization between different brain regions that allowed them to perceive and interact with reality in ways that seemed impossible to ordinary awareness. They could influence physical systems through intention alone. They could perceive information that had no normal sensory pathway. What Grinberg concluded was that consciousness, when operating at maximum coherence, gains access to the informational substrate underlying physical reality. In other words, your frequency determines not just how you experience reality, but what aspects of reality become available to you in the first place. Then there's David R. Hawkins, the researcher who gave us the map of consciousness, a calibrated scale measuring human emotional and consciousness states from the densest frequencies like shame and guilt all the way up to the highest expressions of love, joy, and peace. What Hawkins discovered was that most of humanity operates below the frequency of courage, the critical threshold where consciousness shifts from contraction to expansion. Below courage, you're in survival mode, reactive, defensive, trying to protect yourself from a world that feels threatening. Above courage, consciousness begins to open, to create, to recognize its own power to shape experience. These aren't just abstract concepts. They're measurable energetic states that determine your capacity to shape your experience. But here's what makes Hawkins's work so profound. He didn't just map these states theoretically. He developed a method to actually calibrate the frequency of any statement, person, or object using kinesiological muscle testing. What he found was that truth, genuine alignment with reality, strengthens the human energy field, while falsehood weakens it. This means your body knows the difference between coherence and dissonance at an energetic level. When you're aligned with truth, with your authentic frequency, you become stronger. When you're operating from false beliefs or pretending to be something you're not, your energy field literally weakens and collapses. I'm sharing these names not to add academic weight, but to show you something crucial. Maximizing your vibration isn't spiritual bypassing. It's an evolutionary imperative backed by science. The mechanics of consciousness are real. The relationship between your inner state and outer reality is measurable. Now that you understand this foundation, you're ready to learn how to do it consciously. Most people have been taught that high vibration equals positive emotion. They think if they're feeling joy, gratitude, love, or enthusiasm, then they're vibrating high. And while it's true that these emotional states do accompany elevated frequency, they're symptoms, not the source. The real foundation of your vibrational frequency lives in something far deeper. Your state of consciousness itself, not your emotions, not your thoughts, but the lens through which all experience is filtered and interpreted. When we talk about maximizing your vibration, we're talking about anchoring into a radically expanded perception of what reality is. It means recognizing that everything in existence is energy expressing itself in different forms, and that your consciousness is the organizing principle that determines how that energy manifests in your experience. The more expanded your awareness becomes, the higher the frequency you naturally embody. And from that elevated state, your emotions, decisions, and manifestations all shift to match. This is the real secret. Consciousness, as Grinberg understood it, is the fundamental substrate underlying all perception. It's not something you have. It's what you are. And the frequency at which it vibrates is determined entirely by the internal structures you've accepted as real. Your belief systems, your core convictions, your expectations about life, your identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are. Maximizing your vibration, then, is about living from unshakable alignment with truth, not performing positivity or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about seeing through illusion and operating from clarity, acceptance, and resonance with universal law. Think about what happens when you operate from a distorted perception of reality. When you believe you're separate from everything around you. When you think the universe is random and chaotic. When you see yourself as a victim of circumstances beyond your control, your consciousness contracts into a defensive posture. This contraction creates a dense vibrational field that attracts experiences matching that density. You encounter resistance, obstacles, people who mirror your own internal conflicts, not because the universe is punishing you, but because your frequency is broadcasting a signal that magnetizes those exact experiences to you. Here's where most people go wrong. They try to force a high vibration through affirmations, mantras, or by suppressing anything that feels heavy. What this creates is a fragile, artificial frequency, a spiritual mask that hides what's actually operating beneath the surface. And the universe doesn't respond to what you say or what you pretend to feel. It responds to what you are. The field reads your predominant energetic state, not your words. That's why so many people affirm abundance while still experiencing scarcity. They're broadcasting two different frequencies, and the unconscious one always wins. The conscious mind might be repeating positive statements, but the unconscious mind, which controls approximately 95% of your mental processing, is running programs installed during childhood, trauma, and cultural conditioning. Those programs carry their own frequency, and unless you bring them into awareness and consciously transform them, they'll continue broadcasting the signal that shapes your reality. This is why willpower alone never creates lasting change. You can't override unconscious programming with conscious effort. You can only transform it through awareness, through bringing what's hidden into the light of consciousness, where it can be seen, questioned, and released. Think of your consciousness as a tuning instrument. If that instrument is warped by fear, shame, resentment, or attachment, everything you perceive will come through distorted. You'll see a world that reflects limitation back to you. Even when you experience fleeting moments of happiness, they won't last because the base frequency you're operating from is still dense. But when you clean the instrument, when you expand your perception and begin to see reality as it truly is, interconnected, lawful, intelligent, your vibration naturally elevates. You don't have to force it. It becomes effortless because you're now in alignment with what is. Maximizing your vibration is tuning into truth at the highest level. It's recognizing your divine nature. It's respecting the intelligence woven into existence. It's cultivating presence in every moment, in every breath, in every choice. Elevated emotions will follow naturally, but they're never the starting point. Everything begins with inner awareness, with a willingness to look honestly at what you've been carrying and choosing something different. If you want to transform your frequency, and by extension your entire reality, there's one foundational step you cannot skip. You must clearly identify the consciousness state you're currently operating from. This isn't about checking in on your mood for the day. It's about recognizing the deeper patterns, the invisible architecture that's been shaping how you see, interpret, and respond to everything around you. Your current consciousness state is the mold your reality is being poured into. Your state of consciousness is built from several key elements. First, your belief structure, what you accept as true about yourself, others, and the world. Second, your emotional baseline, the feelings you return to most consistently. Third, your core convictions, the unquestioned assumptions running in the background. Fourth, your expectations, what you anticipate will happen in any given situation. And finally, your identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are. These elements function as perceptual filters. They don't just color how you see the world. They determine what you attract, how you react, and how you co-create every experience you have. But there's another layer most people miss. Your state of consciousness also includes your energetic boundaries, the invisible lines that define where you end and the world begins. When these boundaries are too rigid, you experience separation, isolation, the feeling that you're fundamentally alone in a hostile universe. When they're too porous, you lose yourself in others, absorbing their emotions, their beliefs, their energy, unable to distinguish what's yours from what belongs to someone else. The optimal state is flexible boundaries, strong enough to maintain your center, while open enough to connect authentically with the field around you. Let's say someone is operating from a consciousness state rooted in guilt and shame. That person will interpret almost everything through the lens of unworthiness, self-punishment, and fear of being seen. Even when something good happens, they'll find a way to discount it or believe they don't deserve it. Their energetic boundaries are likely collapsed, taking on responsibility for things beyond their control, while simultaneously rejecting the good that comes toward them. Someone operating from pride, on the other hand, might appear confident on the surface, but their consciousness is still contracted because it depends on feeling better than others. It's a defense mechanism born from hidden insecurity, not true expansion. Their boundaries are rigid, keeping others at a distance to protect the fragile self-image they've constructed. Identifying where you are requires ruthless honesty. Ask yourself these questions. How do I respond when life challenges me? What do I truly believe about my power to create the reality I want? What emotional pattern dominates my inner world? What automatic expectations do I carry about people, about the future, about myself? In which areas of my life do I feel powerless, victimized, or stuck? Where am I pretending to be something I'm not? What am I avoiding looking at? The answers to these questions reveal far more than you think. They point directly to the frequency you're broadcasting. David Hawkins gave us a map for this. Each emotional state corresponds to a specific vibrational frequency. At the bottom, you find shame at 20, guilt at 30, apathy at 50, fear at 100. These are the densest states, where consciousness is maximally contracted. Then comes courage at 200, the pivot point where everything shifts. Above that, you have acceptance at 350, love at 500, joy at 540, peace at 600, states where energy expands and creates. Enlightenment, the state of pure consciousness beyond all identification, calibrates at 700 to 1000. When you identify your current state without judgment, you gain power. Because what remains hidden stays in control. Only what you bring into awareness can be transformed. This isn't about condemning yourself for being in a lower state. It's about seeing clearly and saying, I recognize where I am, and I consciously choose to rise. That single act of awareness already initiates a shift. The observing consciousness is itself a force of healing and elevation. Just by witnessing your patterns without judgment, you begin to dissolve their hold over you. This is the power of metacognition. Thinking about your thinking, observing your observer. It creates space between stimulus and response, between pattern and reaction, and in that space, transformation becomes possible. We're living in a time when wellness culture has turned into a trap. Be positive, stay grateful, keep your vibe high. These messages, though well-meaning, carry a dangerous distortion. The belief that maximizing your vibration means feeling elevated emotions all the time. This misunderstanding creates immense suffering. People desperately try to stay happy, to avoid anything uncomfortable, and they inevitably fail. Then they feel guilty for failing, which drops their frequency even further. The universe operates on cycles. This is one of the Hermetic laws, the principle of rhythm. What rises must fall. What expands must contract. Day turns to night. Seasons change. The pendulum swings. When you believe that high vibration means constant happiness, you begin resisting any emotion that doesn't match that standard. And that's when your frequency actually collapses. Not because of the emotion, but because of your resistance to it. Fear of fear, guilt about sadness, shame around insecurity. It's the resistance that creates density, not the emotion itself. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of vibrational frequency. People think that if they're experiencing anger, grief, or frustration, they've failed somehow, that they've dropped out of alignment. But the truth is far more nuanced. Emotions are information. They're signals from your body and unconscious mind telling you something needs attention. When you resist them, when you judge them as bad or wrong, you create energetic blockages. The emotion doesn't disappear. It goes underground into your shadow, where it continues broadcasting its frequency outside your awareness, sabotaging your conscious intentions. True vibrational elevation is born from acceptance, not forced positivity. An expanded consciousness state is one that allows all emotions to exist without identifying with them. This doesn't mean wallowing in pain or letting suffering dominate your life. It means understanding that every emotion carries information. Dense emotions like sadness, anger, or frustration, when observed with awareness instead of judgment, become doorways to transmutation. They show you where beliefs need updating, where wounds need healing, where consciousness is still contracted. Distorted spirituality has convinced people that feeling good all the time is the mark of evolution. But real evolution happens when you can remain present, lucid, and compassionate even when the emotion you're experiencing is uncomfortable. When you accept an emotion without labeling it as bad, without suppressing it or glorifying it, the energy moves, it transforms, it releases. That's what it actually means to maximize your vibration, allowing life to flow through you in all its forms without losing your center. When you cling to the idea that you must feel good at all times to be high vibe, you enter a cycle of emotional addiction. You start chasing experiences, people, or techniques that make you feel better, not because you're genuinely expanding, but because you're afraid of what might happen if you stop. This creates fake spirituality, where appearance matters more than authenticity, and the cost is steep. You lose touch with your own evolutionary process. You become dependent on external circumstances to maintain your state, which means you've given your power away. Maximum vibration comes from internal coherence, not external validation. Instead, learn to welcome each emotion as part of your journey. Ask, what is this feeling revealing to me about my consciousness, about my beliefs, about what I've been accepting as truth? This question shifts you into the position of observer, and it's the observer who holds maximum frequency, not by denying pain, but by understanding its purpose in the larger pattern. The observer recognizes that you are not the emotion. You are the space in which the emotion arises, exists for a time, and eventually dissolves. This perspective fundamentally changes your relationship to experience. Expanding consciousness isn't a mystical event reserved for the chosen few. It's an ongoing process available to anyone willing to go inward and study how reality actually operates. To do this effectively, you need to merge two seemingly opposite domains. Scientific understanding, which gives you logical clarity about the structure of existence, and spiritual wisdom, which connects you to the essence of who you are beyond physical form. From a scientific lens, modern physics has completely dismantled the idea of a solid, static reality. Quantum mechanics shows us that the universe is primarily energy, and that what we perceive as real represents only a fraction of what exists. Scientists estimate that known matter makes up roughly 5% of the universe. The rest is labeled dark matter and dark energy, terms we use to describe what we can't yet comprehend. On top of that, the human brain processes only a narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum. Your eyes can detect only visible light, a tiny sliver of frequencies ranging from infrared to ultraviolet and beyond. Your ears can hear only certain sound frequencies. What does this tell us? That the reality you think you're living in is actually a highly limited interpretation. Expanding consciousness means questioning that limitation and learning to perceive beyond the surface. Quantum physics has shown us something even more profound. The famous double-slit experiment demonstrated that particles behave differently when they're being observed versus when they're not. An electron can exist as both a wave and a particle, in multiple states simultaneously, until the moment a conscious observer measures it. At that point, the wave function collapses and the particle takes on a definite position. What this suggests is staggering. Consciousness doesn't just observe reality, it participates in creating it. Your awareness, your attention, your observation literally influences the behavior of matter at the quantum level. Science also reveals that mental and emotional states directly affect your biology. Neuroplasticity shows that thoughts change brain structure. Every time you think a thought, you strengthen certain neural pathways while others weaken. This means your habitual thought patterns are physically shaping your brain. Epigenetics demonstrates that beliefs can alter genetic expression. Your genes aren't your destiny. The environment you create through your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors determines which genes get activated and which remain dormant. Heart coherence research proves that focused intention can regulate your entire nervous system. The heart generates the strongest electromagnetic field in the body, and when you cultivate emotional coherence, gratitude, love, appreciation, this field becomes organized and radiates outward, influencing not just your own biology, but the environment around you. If this is resonating with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you stay connected to this frequency. When you understand these mechanisms, you stop seeing emotions and behaviors as random and start recognizing them as programmed responses that can be consciously reprogrammed. You're not a victim of your genetics, your past, or your circumstances. You're a dynamic system constantly responding to information, and you have the power to change the information you're feeding yourself. The spiritual path offers something science can't. It invites you to recognize yourself as pure consciousness, not just the personality you've constructed. The ego is a layer, a tool designed to navigate the material world. Expanding consciousness means stepping back from complete identification with that ego and observing your thoughts, emotions, and patterns as temporary expressions, not ultimate truths. This is where liberation begins. Every spiritual tradition throughout history has pointed to this same realization. The Buddhists call it no self or emptiness, the recognition that the self you think you are is a constructed illusion. The Hindu Vedantic tradition speaks of Atman and Brahman, the individual soul recognizing its identity with universal consciousness. Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart spoke of the God within, the divine spark that is your true nature beyond all form. Sufis describe fana, the annihilation of the false self to reveal what has always been. The language differs, but the core insight remains the same. You are not the small, separate self. You are consciousness itself, temporarily experiencing itself through this particular form. One of the most powerful ways to integrate science and spirituality is through deliberate study. Read about quantum theory, neuroscience, the biology of belief. At the same time, immerse yourself in sacred teachings, meditation practices, and inner silence. It's at the intersection of rational understanding and intuitive knowing that consciousness opens. Every new concept you internalize, every principle you embody, changes the energetic structure of your mind. It repositions your frequency at a higher level. So if you truly want to maximize your vibration, don't just chase good feelings. Seek deep understanding. Read, study, meditate. Observe yourself without judgment. Every time you grasp a universal law, you dissolve an illusion. Every time you expand your perception, you generate more light, more coherence, more vibrational clarity. That clarity is what bends reality. If there's a true turning point in the journey of consciousness expansion, it happens when you stop identifying with the ego. For most people, this isn't a sudden enlightenment experience. It's a sustained, conscious decision to observe what you are not. Disidentifying from ego is the key that unlocks trapped energy, transmutes dense patterns, and elevates your frequency in a way that's real and lasting. The ego isn't your enemy. It's a construct, a collection of beliefs, memories, wounds, fears, and interpretations accumulated over a lifetime. It thinks it needs to control, defend, prove, or hide. When left unobserved, the ego runs your perception, trapping you in repetitive emotional and behavioral loops. You live as if you are a fixed character in a story, believing this is all you'll ever be. The ego forms through a process psychologists call ego development. As a child, you had no sense of separate self. You were pure awareness, undifferentiated from the world around you. Then, through interaction with caregivers and environment, you began to construct an identity. You learned that certain behaviors got you love and approval, while others brought punishment or rejection. You internalized beliefs about who you are, what you're capable of, what you deserve. You created strategies to get your needs met and avoid pain. All of this became your ego structure, the lens through which you interpret everything. The problem is that most of this structure was formed when you were young, when you had limited information and immature coping mechanisms. The beliefs you internalized at 5 years old are still running your life at 35, even though they're no longer relevant or true. The ego clings to these outdated patterns because they're familiar, because releasing them feels like death to the constructed self. But it's not death, it's liberation. Transcending the ego doesn't mean destroying it. It means no longer allowing it to define you. This begins when you develop the capacity to observe your thoughts and emotions without merging with them. When anger arises, for instance, instead of reacting from it, you ask, "Who in me is angry? What belief is this pattern protecting?" In that moment, you're no longer the anger. You're the awareness observing it. And that shift in position raises your frequency immediately. This is vibrational transmutation in action. The observer has the power to dissolve density simply by bringing awareness to it. The more you practice conscious observation, the faster dense states convert into expanded awareness. This takes practice, presence, and humility, because the ego will resist. It will insist it's right. It will blame others. It will justify its patterns. But consciousness doesn't care about being right. It cares about truth, and truth liberates. Eckhart Tolle experienced this directly. During a period of severe depression, he had a thought that changed his entire trajectory. "I can't live with myself anymore." As he sat with that thought, he noticed something profound. There was an I, and there was a myself. Which one was real? That question shattered his identification with ego and catapulted him into a state of expanded awareness. This same process is available to anyone willing to question deeply and observe honestly. When you stop identifying with the ego, all the energy that was locked into maintaining masks, defenses, and patterns gets released. That freed energy naturally reorganizes into higher frequencies: acceptance, compassion, clarity, love. This is what it means to maximize your vibration. Not by trying to become something better, but by finally stopping the pretense of being something you never were. Another profound shift happens when you release attachment to outcomes. The ego is constantly trying to control reality, to make things happen according to its preferences and timelines. This creates massive energetic resistance. You're literally pushing against the flow of life, trying to force your limited will onto an infinitely intelligent universe. This resistance lowers your frequency dramatically because you're operating from fear. The fear that if you don't control everything, it will all fall apart. Maximum vibration comes from surrender, not the surrender of giving up, but the surrender of trust. Trusting that the universe is inherently intelligent, that it's moving toward greater complexity and coherence, and that your role is to align with that movement rather than resist it. When you release attachment to specific outcomes and instead focus on maintaining your highest frequency regardless of what's happening around you, you paradoxically gain access to outcomes far beyond what your limited ego could have imagined. Maximizing your vibration doesn't mean you'll never feel dense emotions again. It means you'll know how to move through them without being overtaken. True mastery isn't revealed when life is easy and you naturally feel joy. It's revealed when you're facing fear, anger, or sadness, and you still choose to remain conscious, present, and open. That's the secret of every master who has walked this path. That's the signature of expanded consciousness. The first principle for maintaining maximum frequency through dense emotions is this: don't identify with the emotion. Emotions are temporary energetic states. They are not who you are. What lowers your vibration isn't the emotion. It's the unconscious merging with it. When sadness arises and you say, "I am sad," with total conviction, you're declaring that this emotion defines your identity. But if you can say, "There is sadness moving through me right now," or "I am observing sadness as it appears," you completely shift your energetic position. In that instant, you're no longer the emotion. You're the spacious awareness holding it, and that elevates your frequency. Language matters here more than most people realize. The words you use to describe your experience literally shape your relationship to it. When you say, "I am angry," you're claiming the anger as your identity. When you say, "I feel anger," or "anger is present," you're creating separation between the observer and the observed. This linguistic shift might seem subtle, but it has profound effects on your consciousness. It reminds you that you are the constant awareness within which emotions come and go, not the emotions themselves. The second principle is to welcome the emotion without resistance. Dense emotions aren't your enemies. They're messengers from your unconscious, signaling where wounds remain, where beliefs are limiting you, where you've disconnected from truth. Instead of pushing them away, ask, "What is this emotion trying to reveal to me?" This single question breaks the cycle of resistance and opens space for insight. Emotions that are met with awareness dissolve faster and often bring profound realizations. Think of emotions as energy that's been compressed and stored in your body and unconscious mind. When circumstances trigger that stored energy, it rises to the surface seeking release and integration. If you resist it, judge it, or try to suppress it, you push it back down where it continues to fester and influence your frequency from beneath awareness. But if you welcome it, breathe with it, allow it to move through you fully, it completes its cycle and releases. The energy that was locked in that emotion becomes available to you again, raising your overall frequency. Now, what we're exploring here touches the surface of a much deeper system, the complete architecture of how consciousness operates as frequency and how you shift from unconscious transmission to becoming the conscious broadcaster of your reality. If you're feeling the pull to go deeper, to understand the 9 master frequencies and the step-by-step practices that move you from seeking to embodiment, I've mapped the entire journey in Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery. It's linked in the pinned comment below. The third principle is to breathe with full presence. Breath is the most direct bridge between your body and your consciousness. When you breathe deeply and consciously while experiencing a dense emotion, you anchor presence within the experience itself. This doesn't just calm your nervous system. It allows the energy of the emotion to move instead of getting stuck. Emotion is literally energy in motion, and conscious breathing is what keeps it flowing. Your breath is also intimately connected to your autonomic nervous system. Shallow, rapid breathing activates the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight response, which keeps you locked in reactive patterns. Deep, slow breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response, which allows your body to relax, integrate, and heal. By consciously breathing through dense emotions, you're signaling to your entire nervous system that you're safe, that this emotion isn't a threat, that you can hold it without being overwhelmed by it. The fourth principle is to remember that nothing lasts forever. No emotion is permanent. Everything passes. When you forget this and enter dense states, the ego uses that moment to convince you this is your new permanent reality. But higher consciousness observes the cycle and trusts the process. You can feel pain without becoming someone who suffers. You can feel fear without becoming a victim. You can feel anger without losing your essence. This principle connects to the Buddhist concept of impermanence, anicca, the recognition that all phenomena are constantly changing. Nothing in the universe remains static. Every emotion, every thought, every sensation arises, exists for a time, and passes away. When you deeply understand this, you stop clinging to pleasant experiences and resisting unpleasant ones. You recognize that both are temporary visitors in the infinite space of your consciousness. This understanding doesn't make you apathetic or detached. It makes you present, able to fully experience each moment without being controlled by it. Finally, remember that maximizing your vibration isn't about achieving a static emotional state. It's about remaining loyal to your highest truth, even in your darkest moments. That's real power. That's spiritual maturity. That's what creates permanent transformation in your frequency. When you move through dense emotion with awareness, you transcend it. And every time you do, your vibrational field becomes stronger, more stable, and begins radiating outward, not just transforming your reality, but touching everyone around you. Your frequency doesn't just affect your personal experience, it influences the collective field. When you hold maximum vibration, you become what physicists call a strange attractor, a stable pattern that pulls surrounding chaos into coherence. People feel this when they're around you. They calm down. They open up. They start accessing higher possibilities they couldn't see before. This is why the work of raising your own frequency is never selfish. It's one of the most generous contributions you can make to the world. Now take a moment and comment below with this phrase: "My frequency shapes reality." This isn't just a comment. It's a declaration you're making to the quantum field itself, a conscious interruption in the patterns that have been running your life. By stating this, you're signaling to the universe that you're ready to operate from a different level. Let this be your anchor point. And if this exploration is touching something deep within you, if you feel a resonance with what's being shared here, then I invite you to subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to this frequency, to this space where consciousness is explored with depth and honesty. This isn't about consuming content. It's about joining a community of people who are committed to expanding awareness and reshaping reality from the inside out. The more of us who hold this frequency, the more the collective field shifts. Subscribe to stay coherent with this movement. There's another dimension to maximizing your vibration that often gets overlooked: the role of your physical body. Your body isn't separate from your consciousness. It's the densest expression of it, the vehicle through which consciousness experiences material reality. And the state of your body directly affects the frequency you're able to hold. When your body is depleted, inflamed, toxic, or disconnected, it creates energetic drag that limits your capacity for expansion. Your cells are constantly communicating with each other through biochemical and electromagnetic signals. When you're stressed, your cells produce cortisol and other stress hormones that create systemic inflammation. This inflammation doesn't just affect your physical health. It lowers your vibrational frequency by creating static in your body's communication networks. When you're nourished, rested, and in a state of physiological coherence, your cells communicate efficiently, your energy flows freely, and your capacity to hold high frequency increases dramatically. This is why practices like proper nutrition, adequate sleep, movement, and breath work aren't separate from spiritual practice. They're foundational to it. You can't expect to maintain maximum vibration if your body is running on caffeine, processed food, and chronic sleep deprivation. Your consciousness might be expanded, but your ability to anchor that expansion into material reality will be compromised. The body must be honored, cared for, and included in the transformation process. Water is particularly important. Your body is approximately 60% water, and water has unique properties that affect consciousness. Research by scientists like Masaru Emoto has shown that water responds to intention, forming different crystalline structures when exposed to positive versus negative energy. While his work remains controversial in mainstream science, it points to something profound. The water in your body, which makes up most of your mass, is responding to your thoughts, emotions, and intentions. When you consciously bless your water, express gratitude before drinking, or set intentions while hydrating, you're literally changing the structure of the medium through which all cellular communication happens. Movement is another key. When you move your body with awareness, whether through dance, yoga, tai chi, or simply walking in nature, you're circulating energy, releasing stagnant patterns, and creating space for higher frequencies to integrate. Trauma and dense emotions get stored in the tissues of your body, particularly in the fascia, the connective tissue that surrounds every muscle and organ. These stored patterns create energetic blockages that lower your frequency. Conscious movement helps release these patterns, allowing trapped energy to move and transform. Your environment also plays a crucial role in your vibrational frequency. You're constantly exchanging energy with your surroundings. If you're in chaotic, cluttered, or negative environments, your frequency will be pulled down as you unconsciously absorb and match the energy around you. This is why creating sacred space matters. When you intentionally design your environment to support high frequency, Through cleanliness, beauty, natural elements, and positive energy, you create a field that reinforces your own elevated state rather than draining it. The people you surround yourself with have perhaps the strongest environmental influence on your frequency. Mirror neurons in your brain automatically fire in response to the emotions and behaviors you observe in others. This is how empathy works, but it also means you're constantly absorbing the frequencies of people around you. If you're consistently surrounded by people operating from fear, victimhood, drama, or negativity, maintaining maximum vibration becomes exponentially harder. Not because you're weak, but because you're fighting against a constant energetic current. This doesn't mean you should abandon everyone who isn't enlightened, but it does mean you need to be strategic about your relationships. Spend more time with people who inspire you, who are also committed to growth, who operate from authenticity and higher consciousness. Limit exposure to people who drain your energy or pull you into lower frequencies. And when you must engage with challenging energies, do so consciously, maintaining clear boundaries and not allowing their frequency to destabilize your own. There's also a practice that accelerates vibrational elevation more than almost anything else. Gratitude. Not the performative gratitude where you list things you're supposed to be thankful for, but genuine felt gratitude that arises from deep appreciation for existence itself. When you cultivate authentic gratitude, your heart generates coherent electromagnetic patterns that literally raise your frequency and broadcast it into the field around you. Research at the HeartMath Institute has shown that gratitude and appreciation create measurable changes in heart rate variability, the variation in time intervals between heartbeats. When you feel genuine gratitude, your heart rhythm becomes coherent, organized, and harmonious. This coherence doesn't stay localized in your heart. It radiates outward, affecting your brain waves, your immune function, your hormonal balance, and even the people around you. Gratitude isn't just a nice feeling. It's a powerful technology for raising your frequency and influencing reality. The practice is simple, but profound. Several times a day, pause and bring your attention to your heart. Breathe slowly and deeply, imagining the breath moving in and out through your heart center. Then, activate a feeling of genuine gratitude. It could be for something simple, the warmth of sunlight, a moment of connection, the miracle of your breath. Don't just think about gratitude. Feel it in your body. Let it fill your chest and radiate outward. Do this for 3 to 5 minutes, and you'll notice an immediate shift in your state. Your frequency elevates, your mind clears, and reality begins responding differently to your presence. Another powerful practice for maximizing vibration is conscious intention setting. Your intentions create directional force in the quantum field. They're not wishes or hopes. They're coherent signals that organize energy towards specific outcomes. But most people's intentions remain ineffective because they're mixed with doubt, fear, or attachment. They want something desperately, which creates resistance, or they don't truly believe it's possible, which cancels the signal before it can manifest. Effective intention setting requires you to reach a state of elevated emotion and coherent thought simultaneously. You need to feel the reality of what you're intending as if it's already true, while simultaneously releasing attachment to how or when it appears. This is the paradox at the heart of manifestation. You must care deeply while also not needing the outcome. You must desire powerfully while trusting completely. When you can hold this paradoxical state, your intentions carry maximum creative force. Here's how to practice this. First, Get clear on what you truly want to create or experience, not what you think you should want, but what genuinely calls to your soul. Second, enter a meditative state where your brain waves slow down and you access deeper levels of consciousness. Third, imagine the reality you're intending with as much sensory detail as possible. See it, feel it, hear it, make it real in your imagination. Fourth, activate the emotions you would feel if this reality were already present. Joy, gratitude, fulfillment, peace. Fifth, release it completely. Let go of attachment to the outcome. Trust that if this intention aligns with your highest path, it will manifest in perfect timing. The key is consistency. One powerful intention setting session can shift things, but regular practice rewires your consciousness at the deepest levels. You're literally training your nervous system to operate from the frequency of your desired reality rather than the frequency of your current circumstances. Over time, the gap between intention and manifestation collapses because you've aligned your predominant frequency with what you're calling in. Shadow work is another essential practice for maintaining maximum vibration. Your shadow consists of all the parts of yourself you've rejected, denied, or hidden from awareness. These rejected aspects don't disappear. They sink into your unconscious, where they continue operating, sabotaging your conscious intentions and broadcasting frequencies you're not aware of. Until you bring your shadow into light, you'll never fully maximize your vibration because part of your energy system remains contaminated by unintegrated darkness. Shadow work requires courage because it means looking at the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Your jealousy, your rage, your selfishness, your shame, the ways you've hurt others, the ways you've betrayed yourself. These aren't comfortable territories to explore, but they're necessary. When you bring awareness to your shadow with compassion rather than judgment, something miraculous happens. The energy that was trapped in those rejected parts gets freed and becomes available to you again. Pause here and share in the comments. What's one shadow aspect you've recently become aware of? Or one pattern you're ready to finally integrate? Your sharing creates permission for others to do the same. Carl Jung, who developed the concept of the shadow, said that we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is profound wisdom. You can't transcend what you haven't integrated. You can't rise above patterns you're still denying exist. The path to maximum vibration runs directly through your shadow, not around it. One practice for shadow work is to notice whenever you have a strong negative reaction to someone. That reaction is almost always a projection, something in them that mirrors an unacknowledged part of yourself. If someone's arrogance triggers you, there's likely arrogance in yourself you haven't owned. If someone's neediness irritates you, examine where you're needy but pretending not to be. The external world is always showing you your internal world. Use it as a mirror. Another aspect of maximizing vibration involves understanding and working with energy directly. Everything is energy, but different frequencies of energy behave in different ways. Dense, low-frequency energy feels heavy, stuck, contracted. It shows up as chronic tension in your body, repetitive negative thoughts, emotional numbness, or explosive reactivity. High-frequency energy feels light, flowing, expansive. It shows up as vitality, clarity, creative inspiration, and emotional resilience. You can learn to sense and direct energy through practice. Start by developing sensitivity to your own energy field. Close your eyes and bring attention to your body. Notice where energy feels flowing versus where it feels blocked. Notice areas of warmth versus coldness, tingling versus numbness, expansion versus contraction. As you develop this sensitivity, you can begin consciously moving energy through breath, intention, and awareness. Practices like Qigong, Reiki, and pranic healing work directly with energy, teaching you to accumulate, circulate, and transmit it consciously. These aren't mystical superpowers. They're learnable skills based on your innate capacity to direct life force through attention. When you can consciously work with energy, you gain tremendous power to clear blockages, raise your frequency, and influence your immediate environment. Another crucial element is understanding the role of service in maintaining high vibration. When you live only for yourself, focused solely on your own expansion and desires, your frequency eventually plateaus. There's a natural ceiling to how high you can rise when you're operating from pure self-interest. But when you shift from what can I get to what can I give, something shifts in the field around you. Your frequency elevates because you're now aligned with the fundamental movement of the universe itself, which is toward greater connection, complexity, and consciousness. Service doesn't mean martyring yourself or ignoring your own needs. It means recognizing that your gifts, your talents, your unique expression of consciousness are meant to be shared. When you withhold your gifts, when you play small, when you hide from your purpose, you create energetic stagnation that lowers your frequency. When you offer your gifts generously, even before you feel ready, even when it's uncomfortable, you open channels for energy to flow through you rather than to you. You become a conduit for universal intelligence rather than a container trying to hoard it. The highest expression of service is living in alignment with your dharma, your unique purpose or calling. Everyone incarnated with specific gifts to develop and contribute. When you're living your dharma, work doesn't feel like struggle. You're energized by what you do rather than depleted by it. You lose track of time because you're so engaged. This is flow state, and it's one of the highest frequencies humans can access. You're no longer a separate self trying to accomplish something. You're pure consciousness expressing through form, and that expression itself becomes the reward. Finding your dharma requires listening deeply to yourself. What activities make you feel most alive? What problems in the world genuinely move you? What would you do even if no one paid you or praised you? The answers to these questions point toward your purpose. And when you align your life with that purpose, your frequency maximizes naturally because you're finally doing what you came here to do. There's also profound importance in learning to be with silence and stillness. Modern life is structured to keep you constantly distracted, stimulated, and externally focused. Social media, news, entertainment, endless information, all of it keeps your attention fragmented and your energy dispersed. In this state, it's nearly impossible to maintain maximum vibration because you're leaking energy in 1,000 different directions. Silence and stillness allow your energy to consolidate, to gather itself back into coherence. When you sit in meditation, when you spend time in nature without devices, when you create space with no agenda and nothing to do, your nervous system recalibrates. The constant activation of your stress response settles. Your brain waves shift from beta, the frequency of active thinking, to alpha and theta, the frequencies of deep relaxation and meditative awareness. In these slower frequencies, you gain access to dimensions of consciousness unavailable in your normal waking state. Many people resist silence because when external noise stops, internal noise becomes deafening. All the thoughts, emotions, and sensations you've been avoiding through distraction suddenly demand attention. This is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. You can't transform what you won't acknowledge. Silence strips away all the buffers and shows you exactly what's running in your system. If you can learn to sit with that without running away, without medicating it with distraction, you begin to dissolve the patterns at their root. Meditation is the primary technology for cultivating this relationship with silence. There are countless meditation techniques, but they all share a common purpose: training your attention. Your attention is your most valuable resource because wherever it goes, energy follows. When your attention is scattered, your energy is scattered. When your attention is focused and stable, your energy becomes coherent and powerful. Start with just 10 minutes a day. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and bring attention to your breath. Don't try to control it, just observe it. When your mind wanders, and it will constantly, gently bring attention back to the breath. That's the practice. Not achieving a blank mind or reaching some special state, but simply training your attention to stay present rather than compulsively thinking about past and future. Over time, something shifts. The space between thoughts begins to expand. You start noticing that you are not your thoughts. You're the awareness observing them. This recognition alone can be transformative because it breaks the identification with the thinking mind that keeps most people trapped in lower frequencies. You begin to access the pure consciousness underlying all experience, and that consciousness vibrates at the highest frequency possible. And let me share something important with you. If this understanding is calling to you, consider returning to this video tomorrow morning, letting these concepts reorganize your frequency before the day begins. Or share it with someone who's ready for this shift. When you share consciousness expanding content like this, you're not just passing along information. You're creating an energetic ripple that strengthens your own embodiment of these principles while activating something in the person receiving it. The field responds to this generosity, and synchronicities begin multiplying for both of you. Now that you understand what it truly means to maximize your vibration, not as an emotional performance but as the natural expression of expanded consciousness, the next step is integration. Everything shared here only becomes real when you apply it consistently in your lived experience. You don't need to overhaul your entire life in one day, but you can begin right now with a single conscious choice: to observe yourself with more presence. Whenever an emotion surfaces, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what am I accepting as truth in this moment? That one question has the power to interrupt decades-old patterns and realign you with your highest frequency. Study more deeply. Question everything you've accepted as given. Meditate regularly. Expand your awareness through both scientific inquiry and spiritual practice. Use consciousness maps. Recognize your patterns. Work with your shadow. Honor your body. Cultivate gratitude. Set clear intentions. Serve something larger than yourself. And most importantly, stop running from who you truly are. Within you exists an unlimited consciousness that has always been there, waiting to emerge. The path to maximum vibration isn't linear. You won't ascend smoothly from one level to the next without setbacks or challenges. There will be days when you feel contracted, when old patterns resurface, when you question everything. This is normal. This is part of the process. The difference is that now you have tools. You have understanding. You know that these contractions are temporary, that they're showing you where more integration is needed, and that your commitment isn't to perfection, but to presence. Remember that maximizing your vibration isn't about reaching some final destination where you've transcended all human experience. It's about learning to navigate the full spectrum of existence with consciousness, grace, and authenticity. It's about recognizing that you are both human and divine, both form and formless, both individual and universal. When you can hold that paradox without needing to resolve it, you've accessed the frequency that bends reality. Your frequency is your power. It's not what you say or what you know intellectually. It's what you embody moment to moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. Every time you choose awareness over reactivity, presence over distraction, truth over comfort, you're maximizing your frequency. And as your frequency rises, you'll notice reality reorganizing around you. Opportunities appearing, synchronicities multiplying, relationships transforming, obstacles dissolving. Not because you've manipulated reality through force, but because you've aligned with the intelligence that's been orchestrating reality all along. This is your invitation. Not to become someone new, but to remember who you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning, fear, and false identity. You are consciousness itself, playing in the field of form. And when you remember this, when you embody this, when you live from this truth, your vibration naturally maximizes, and reality has no choice but to reflect that frequency back to you. Before we close, I want you to drop one word in the comments. One word that captures the energy, the intention, the transformation you're choosing as you step forward from this moment. Let that word be your energetic signature in the quantum field, a signal of who you're becoming. And if you haven't already, subscribe now. Not just to stay connected, but to stay aligned, to stay coherent with this frequency. Share this video with someone who's ready to transcend the old patterns and step into a new level of consciousness. The more of us who embody this understanding, the more reality itself begins to reflect that truth back to us. We're not just individual consciousnesses raising our vibrations in isolation. We're part of a collective awakening, and every person who maximizes their frequency contributes to the elevation of the whole. This is your time. Maximize your vibration, not as an escape from life, but as a conscious choice to live in alignment with the deepest truth of what you are. The field is waiting for your signal. Reality is ready to bend, and you now have everything you need to make it happen. Step into your maximum frequency and watch what becomes possible. Now here's what needs to happen next. You've learned how frequency shapes reality, but there's a deeper layer most people miss. Your nervous system holds the key to everything. You cannot maintain maximum vibration. You cannot manifest from coherence if your nervous system is locked in survival mode, broadcasting static into the field. The video on screen right now reveals exactly how to reset your nervous system and why this is the foundation all manifestation depends on. Watch it now.